And welcome to Hannity. President Trump continues his foreign trip by meeting with leaders at the G7 summit in Italy. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle in for Sean tonight, who is off for the Memorial Day weekend, and he will be back on Tuesday. President Trump, who has made fighting extremism a staple of his overseas trip, appears to have scored a big win, with G7 nations agreeing to do more to combat terrorism. Now, while the president is getting strong reviews for his diplomatic efforts, many in the mainstream media are still attacking him. Take a look.
The entire world's watching, and of course, most importantly, Vladimir Putin's watching. It seemed like yesterday was his love note to Vladimir Putin. It really did.
There's only one explanation for all of this, and it's all of the other stuff that his ally, that his brethren, that his butter, his cake is being buttered somehow with the Russians.
The fact that our president does not respect those allies actually shows more warmth to Putin and his cronies, more warmth to the Saudis, where, of course, the 9/11 terrorists came from. That's really disturbing.
And joining us now with reaction, the host of Michelle Malkin Investigates on CRTV.com, Michelle Malkin. So, Michelle, welcome to the program. Lots to discuss. So far, I want to get your general impressions in terms of President Trump's first foreign trip. How do you think it's going?
I think it's been highly successful, and I think that's why you see all of these Lilliputians in the elite liberal media whining and moaning. What is it that they want out of the leader of the free world, our commander-in-chief, the President of the United States? Well, we obviously know what they prefer. They prefer the world apology tour that Obama conducted for over 8 years. And I don't know if you remember this, Kimberly, but there was a joke T-shirt during the Obama years, you know, kind of like the concert T-shirts you get from your favorite band with all of the greatest hits on the back. And that's what it was like with Obama, time and time again, going overseas, groveling, trashing America. Do you remember in Strasbourg, France, where he called America arrogant, where he apologized to the Muslim world for us taking a stand against terrorism, which he would never do explicitly, of course. All of the whitewashing, the euphemisms, going overseas to Europe and apologizing that America would assert itself and assert and defend its own sovereignty. He called that dictating to the rest of the world. And finally, we have a president who physically and ideologically will elbow, right? Do what he can to make sure that America literally is first in those photographs. And we have these gossip girls in the media who are fretting and moaning about the length of his handshakes with European leaders.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Little crybabies and just like a little band of mean girls running around, just upset about everything, gossiping, texting each other to say, oh, can you believe what the president's doing? I mean, it seems as if they really cannot wrap their heads around the idea that he's doing a great job, that he's been successful, and by the way, that he was far better well received on this foreign trip than he's been treated here in this country.
Exactly. And look what happens when you assert yourself. You command respect.
Yes.
Here, domestically, you had all of these leftist propagandists, the propaganda media, bemoaning the fact that Trump had the gall and the courage to go up at these meetings and say, look, NATO, you ought to pay your fair share. We take the bulk of that burden, and it's time that you put your money where your sanctimonious mouths are. And he's not going to be two-faced about it the way that Obama was, and he's not going to pussyfoot around, and he's not going to use the kind of language and dulcet tones to deal with either our allies or our enemies.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And by the way, why is it a bad thing that the president's like everybody paid their fair share? I don't know that we need to remind anybody that, listen, we stand, one is attacked, we stand with you. I get the Article 5 thing, but I mean, this is sort of obvious, but people are trying to get away with not paying the money, but they want all the benefits, you know, of the United States backing them up while they run around with gator arms and they can't put their hands in their pocket to pay the dues.
Exactly, Kimberly. And whether we're talking about NATO, G7, or the United Nations, it's the American taxpayer that has been the hero of the world. And finally, we have a spokesman to point that out. I think it's an interesting juxtaposition when you look at the speeches that Donald Trump has given on this tour, the assertiveness tour, as opposed to the apology tour.
Right.
And take Mark Zuckerberg's commencement speech. That is what the liberal media would prefer Trump go overseas and do. That our responsibility is to be citizens of the world rather than American citizens putting America first.
No, it's unbelievable. It's like the socialism apology, tour, the bend and snap tour, like President Obama did. But so the president has got to have, a team and put together to try to combat all these, stories. We'll talk about, what's going on here at home now, these like Russian collusion investigations and sensational stories that the mainstream media is frothing at the mouth about. So there have been reports that he's going to set up sort of a war room and like street fighters to be able to get out there to do the president's messaging. What do you make of those reports?
Well, I'm glad to hear it. And I'm glad to hear that Steve Bannon is going to be the one leading it.
Agreed.
And it is this assertive stance, a stance of not just sitting back and allowing all of these progressives to hijack the Trump agenda, to hijack the narratives. This is why Donald Trump was put into the White House in the first place. And it is a daily slog. I do not envy the folks in the Trump administration that have to deal with this every single day. It's enough that they have to combat our international and foreign enemies, but the domestic enemies within this country, and specifically, Kimberly, within the Fourth Estate. I think it was important for him to call to the carpet all of these leakers who were the real threats to national security in America.
It's unbelievable the amount of leaks, making America less safe, compromising our national security. It's got to come to a stop. It's completely, affecting his ability to govern and put his policies and his platform forward. But I'm concerned, Michelle, because I feel that he needs the right people around him to get this under control, because this is a man about business. He wants to get these things done. He has every intention of fulfilling his campaign promises. But my goodness, who are these people, that are inside the White House, et cetera, that are obstructionists and essentially almost playing for the other side, crippling the president's ability to get work done? It is frustrating beyond belief.
It is. I couldn't have said it any better than you just did, Kimberly. We've got a West Wing, an East Wing, and a Patriot Wing within the White House. And it's that Patriot Wing, I think, that has to have as much support as possible to make sure that Trump is able to do his job and fulfill his promises. The one last thing I'd say about this trip that I think was especially important was, although it was tragic, it was also timely that the Manchester attack took place to underscore and to provide very sharp punctuation to the Trump agenda and the reason why he is the commander-in-chief of this country, because it's the safety, security, and prosperity of our people that enhances not only our country, but the rest of the world.
You're absolutely right. And I'm going to touch a little bit, on the fight against extremism and terrorism. The president, very strong on his messaging. I loved it, where he's saying, drive them out, and that he was calling them, evil losers. And people are like, oh, don't say losers. That's not very presidential. That's not a good, term to use. I get what he's doing. He's trying to demean them and counteract against the propaganda that's out there that recruits these losers that want to have some relevance in life, and that they come forward like this and bomb and blow themselves up and murder innocent little girls.
Exactly. I'll tell you what's not presidential. The way that President Obama talked about and handled terrorism in this country. There were multiple times in the aftermath of jihad attacks when he looked put upon. Like it was just, oh, this again, right? And he couldn't call these enemies what they were. And remember, this is a man ideologically who thinks that the problem with radical Islam and Islamic imperialism is that they don't have enough empathy, right? That we don't have enough understanding, that they need more programs and funding when they've got plenty of all of those things.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me. It's like everything's going to be cured if only we can fix climate change so it doesn't upset and disturb ISIS and get them a job fair, the ISIS job fair, and also throw in a taco truck for them so that everyone can be happy and fed and feel safe space. Oh, man, I can't take it. You know what I'm saying. All right, Michelle Malkin, ladies and gentlemen, she's the best. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thanks, Kimberly.
All right, coming up next, right here on Hannity.
I think poverty, to a large extent, is also a state of mind.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
Ben Carson is getting slammed for his comments while Harvard liberals cheered on Mark Zuckerberg for his remarks. Herman Cain is here next with reaction, and later.
What are they saying to explain that they're the crown prince of the White House, the son-in-law who sits next to the president every day, the fact that he's under scrutiny now? How are they explaining that or denying that or what?
The liberal media is using new government leaks to go after President Trump's son-in-law and key advisor, Jared Kushner. Dennis Kucinich, Joe Concha, and Doug Schoen join us with reaction. That and much more as this very busy Hannity continues. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson, is facing intense backlash for this statement he made about poverty. Watch.
I think poverty, to a large extent, is also a state of mind. You take somebody who has the right mindset, you can take everything from them and put them on the street, and I guarantee you, in a little while, they'll be right back up there. And you take somebody with the wrong mindset, you can give them everything in the world. They'll work their way back down to the bottom.
Meanwhile, liberals like Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg are saying we should consider basic universal income for Americans. Take a look.
Every generation expands its definition of equality. Now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. We should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
And joining us now with reaction, Fox News contributor and former presidential candidate Herman Cain. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, Kimberly. Happy to be here.
All right. So now what do you think of Ben Carson's comment on poverty being a state of mind? Is he right?
Dr. Carson is exactly right. You see, Kimberly, I have been in poverty, and now I'm a CEO. And I like being a CEO a lot better. And the reason I was able to get out of poverty was for two reasons. Number one, we didn't have the liberal media and the Democrats and the liberals telling us we were poor. Secondly, I was blessed with parents and people around me that gave me that winning state of mind that Dr. Carson talked about, and that's what has allowed me to achieve beyond my own American dream. So he's exactly right. Now, if I can come in on Mark Zuckerberg,
yes, please.
Why doesn't he just send all the poor people a check and stop spending my money, okay? Let's go ahead, Mark. We're not going to stop you. Secondly, if you had a guaranteed minimum income for people, what would be their incentive to exceed things based upon their own abilities? That's not the way this society was built, and that's not the way this society should grow going forward. He is dead wrong. It's easy for a billionaire to say, give everybody a check. But no, I believe in the model that we've used for hundreds of years, and that is you achieve your American dream based upon your own motivation, your own inspiration, and your own aspiration, like I and millions of other people did in this country.
It's so true. You know, we have so many people that come here as immigrants and build their families up and are able to try to earn a dollar and to be able to put away money for the future and for education and for their children. And I don't understand. His model is just completely off kilter. I mean, what is wrong with this guy? He's talking about a completely different country. We pride ourselves here on our entrepreneurial spirit about people wanting to build something themselves versus just getting a handout. I mean, where is he getting this, that this is going to work in this country? That's a failed model that fails in socialist countries.
Yes, it has failed in socialist countries. I don't know where he gets this idea, but some people believe it's called rich guilt. All of the people that call my radio show who are from other countries, they applaud and they are thankful for the opportunities that they have gotten since they've been in this country. None of the people from other countries call up and say, where's more free stuff?
Right.
They call up and they are thankful for the opportunity to create the lifestyle that they have. I don't know where Mark is getting it from, but he is dead wrong in terms of his assertion that this generation needs to give away more free stuff. No. You earn your way in America like most of us have.
Absolutely, and earning it feels good, doesn't it? I mean, that's what you want to do. You want to wake up in the morning and say, how can I make my life better and the lives of those that I care about, my family members? And by the way, be an inspiration to other people, you know, like you have done in your life. So besides Mark Zuckerberg, he's in some, well, losing company with Hillary Clinton. Take a listen to this, and I'll get your reaction.
Okay.
By the way, we were furious about the past presidential election of a man whose presidency would eventually end in disgrace with his impeachment for obstruction of justice. Some are even denying things we see with our own eyes, like the size of crowds. When people in power invent their own facts and attack those who question them, it can mark the beginning of the end of a free society.
So Hillary Clinton going for the cheap laughs on the laugh track. Press the button, cue the laughs to try to take some cheap shots. I know, you just can't make it up. So what do you make of this comment? I mean, she's addressing the future, hopefully, you know, leaders of tomorrow.
She wasn't talking to leaders of tomorrow. She was talking to socialists and communists of tomorrow. That's why they laughed and applauded when she said what she said. Look, you're talking about making up your own facts. Hillary Clinton has done that her entire public career, period, and has been able to get away with it because of that Clinton machine that many of us know has been there and it is still there. Secondly, Hillary Clinton is still looking for relevance, and she is relevant only to those people who blindly followed her in the first place. She's not gaining any new followers based upon that kind of rhetoric. And then one last thing. President Donald Trump is doing a great job, and they are in denial. Hillary Clinton, all of the people that follow her, they're in denial of what I describe, and I've described it a couple of times this week on Fox, and that is TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. So she's going to continue to get people to laugh and applaud at some of her misguided statements. So she's the one that's guilty of making up her own facts and trying to deceive the American people.
You're absolutely right. Somebody called the CDC because that TDS is spreading like wildfire. And by the way, the mainstream media caught it too. All right.
That's great.
Always a pleasure to have you with us on the program. Thank you so much.
I'm delighted, Kimberly. Thank you.
Okay, and coming up next, right here on Hannity.
What are they saying to explain that they're the crown prince of the White House, the son-in-law, who sits next to the president every day, the fact that he's under scrutiny now? How are they explaining that or denying that or what?
And new leaks help the media take aim at President Trump's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner. Dennis Kucinich, Joe Concha, and Doug Schoen join us next with reaction, and later.
It can happen almost here anytime. I was telling Steve on the way in here, if he knew what I know about terrorism, he'd never leave the house.
DHS Chief John Kelly offers that blunt assessment about the threat posed by terrorism. Chris Tanto-Paranto and Steve Hilton will weigh in. Stay with us as Hannity continues.
Good evening and live from America's News headquarters, I'm Jackie Ibanez. The U.S. is testing its systems for shooting down intercontinental missiles. It's first, and it comes as growing concerns about North Korea's aggression. It's something that the goal is to simulate a North Korean missile targeting the U.S. Now, that test is scheduled for Tuesday. A federal judge tossed the life sentences for the so-called D.C. sniper. The judge found that Lee Boyd Malvo is entitled to new sentencing hearings. That's after a Supreme Court ruling that mandatory life sentences for juveniles are unconstitutional. Malvo was 17 when he was arrested for killing 10 people. His accomplice, John Allen Muhammad, was executed in 2009. And Ariana Grande is returning to Manchester for a benefit concert. No date is set for the concert to raise funds for victims and their families. A suicide bomber killed 22 people shortly after Grande's concert ended on Monday. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now, back to Hannity. Have a great weekend.
Welcome back to Hannity. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, in for Sean, who is off for the Memorial Day holiday. Damaging government leaks continue to cause headaches for the White House. The president's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, is the latest target. The mainstream media is nuts with wall-to-wall coverage over reports that Kushner is under FBI scrutiny in the Russia investigation. Watch this.
I am on meds that make me out of it. I apologize for neither looking nor sounding nor being my best, but, you know, once in a lifetime, this story. When I got the call about this news, I really wanted to come in because I think this is important.
It seems to me that the key to understanding Jared Kushner is that, like his father-in-law, he is an incredibly self-interested, greedy, self-serving, and kind of amoral figure. He is, you know, these are really bottom-feeding, sinister figures. And one of the great tricks I think that Jared and Ivanka play on the world is that because they're so elegant looking, because they're so poised, people tend to conflate that with some kind of innate decency. This is a gangster family.
I don't have enough confidence in Donald Trump to keep his stupid mouth shut and not obstruct justice or tamper with the witness when the witness is his son-in-law.
What are they saying to explain that they're the crown prince of the White House, the son-in-law, who sits next to the president every day, the fact that he's under scrutiny now? How are they explaining that or denying that or what?
And earlier today, Bloomberg's Eli Lake put out a new column with the headline, quote, Trump's allies convicted of high crimes without a trial. Well, that pretty much sums up exactly what we've seen going on in the media. And joining us now with reaction, former Congressman and Fox News contributor Dennis Kucinich. From The Hill, Joe Concha, and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. I mean, wow, shock and awe, a couple of those clips, right? Doug, can you even explain this?
Yeah.
This derangement?
There's a criminal investigation going on. As far as we know, it's on General Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort. Jared Kushner is apparently a person in interest. We have a long way to go in the investigation. We don't know if there will be any charges against anyone. Certainly what General Flynn is alleged to have done could well be criminal, but we're at the start. Nobody's convicted. Nobody should be. And in the interest of fairness, the leaks are very disturbing and disquieting and should be investigated as well.
Okay, and Joe, you know, when we look at this, we also need to know the time frame, because if they're saying it was interference with the U.S. presidential election, then conversations that happened prior to the election, that's one section, but any kind of conversations that happened after the election has nothing to do with collusion with Russia about the election.
That makes total sense.
Right?
Right. Look, the journalism side is gone in journalism. It's all about business now. It's all about clickbait. Let me explain that to the audience. That's like bait and switch in business, where you have a headline, in this case, that draws the reader in, and then the content is something completely different. So in this case, Washington Post headline was, Jared Kushner now a focus in Russia investigation. But if you read the story, you got to go 5 paragraphs down, and the Post says the Post has not been told that Kushner is a target or the central focus of the investigation, and he has not been accused of any wrongdoing.
Exactly.
So it drew me in only to say that he's not the focus when the headline said he was the focus. Clickbait.
All right. So, Dennis, what do you make of this situation? I mean, it really got pretty hysterical last night and even today in terms of, you know, name calling to the family. They're sinister, they're bottom feeders, like all kinds of craziness. How is this advancing in any way American democracy and political discourse?
Well, it doesn't, and I don't think it plays very well with the American people. What you see here is the politicization of the FBI with these leaks. And what it's doing is it's tainting any investigation. There's no objectivity here. And it hurts the FBI. But there's another thing, too, which people in the media ought to pay attention to. Go back to a 1966 Supreme Court case, Shepard versus Maxwell, which showed that prejudicial publicity was used to overturn a conviction, and they saw violations of the First Amendment, of the Sixth Amendment, right to the fair trial, and of the 14th Amendment, due process. So there's a legal process that is being usurped here by a very, very invective politics.
It's pretty unbelievable. And one of his attorneys, Jamie Gorelick, Doug, has also released a statement saying that Jared Kushner will cooperate like he has in the past, that they have not been contacted by, anyone saying that he is the subject or a target of the investigation, and no evidence thus far of wrongdoing.
All true and all important to say, and what Dennis Kucinich said is exactly right. We got to get rid of the politicization of the FBI. But I would underscore, we do need to have an investigation of what did or did not happen. And the fact that there's no evidence now doesn't mean that there won't be evidence of wrongdoing. And I focus on General Flynn, who had unauthorized contact with the Russians, was working for the Turks at a time when he was also the national security designate of the President of the United States. There are real issues to investigate, but let's not rush to judgment.
Right. And again, it's so important, Joe, to have, the due process, and like Dennis mentioned, to make sure we can have a full and fair and impartial hearing, get to the bottom of this. Of course, it's what the American people deserve. But
Kimberly,
trying to do these red herrings, it makes no sense.
Well, Kimberly, we have to be aware of the impact of prejudicial publicity. And for the FBI to participate in these leaks actually would destroy any case that they would try to build. So this is really a wrong approach. It's damaging to our Constitution. It hurts our country. And the FBI ought to get back to the basic work of doing investigations without trying to convict people through rumors, innuendo, and leaks.
Absolutely, because they're not making any forward progress here, Joe, in terms of they already had the problems under Comey and with the Hillary Clinton investigation, and now this is unseemly, for the FBI.
And this is being all done through unnamed sources. Every New York Times and Washington Post report. Now, here's the thing about unnamed sources that people at home don't like. They don't know the motives of these sources. They don't know the credibility of these sources. They don't know the access that these sources have to the president's inner circle. The New York Times is a style guide. It's a rule book that says anonymity should be the last resort. It has become the first resort in journalism in 2017 because it's all about clicks and retweets instead of being accurate and being professional and having integrity.
Yeah, and Doug, this really emphasizes the point, what we've seen in some of this polling and everything, which is that the general, American public distrusts the media and thinks that they are not being given the truth, that people are hiding behind this anonymity, and it really cheapens the information that's available.
Two quick points, Kimberly. First, Donald Trump got the biggest amount of applause on the campaign trail when he attacked the media.
Right.
One other point that I don't think has been made is that Mr. Gianforte, the congressman-elect in Montana, may well have picked up support because he body slammed a British journalist.
You raised $100,000 as a result of that.
I just think that may well have helped him, and that's very sad that we're in that kind of an adversarial situation. Very sad indeed.
Yeah, I think it's an important point because we saw this unfold last night, on the air in terms of the election results coming in. People thought maybe he was going to take a hit. It turns out to be, quite the opposite, at least.
But I love the narrative that Trump somehow made Gianforte do it. Look, reporters have been attacked for a long time, well before Donald Trump, including by a guy named Alec Baldwin, who plays Trump on Saturday Night Live. Used to beat the crap out of reporters in New York on a regular basis, and no one talks about that.
No, it's really too much of a stretch.
We don't want violence against people in the media, though. We don't want
it.
Absolutely don't condone.
I totally agree.
Absolutely not. I don't want to be quoted as supporting it.
No,
It's just that it doesn't engender ill will the way it probably ought to.
Exactly.